Welcome back to Truth Moment. Welcome back to Truth Moment. I'm your host, Tiara Pritchett. This next episode is incredibly special to me. Now, don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed working on all of my episodes, but this next one, it's about breast cancer. And so for any of my audience members who know me, they know that I have a special place in my heart for breast cancer. Because according to breastcancer.org, 40,000 women were proposed to lose their life in 2015. Well, my aunt was one of those women. And my producer, Latoya Shanice, she lost her grandmother in 2013. So my next guest, I know that it was an act of God that I found her, because Latoya and myself, we needed to see that everyone doesn't die from breast cancer. There's a reason to hope and there's a reason to fight. So without further ado, please allow me to welcome Miss Wendy Dwayne.
Thank you, Tiara. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
No, the pleasure is all mine, really. You have no idea. That day when I walked in and met you and you agreed to do Truth Moment, I was speechless because, like I said in the intro, we needed to see that, there's a reason to hope and there's a reason to fight. So please share with my audience, what's your story? When was the day that breast cancer became real to you and your life was changed like never before?
Well, Tiara, I have been a mammography technologist for about 28 years. So
Okay.
I've worked around breast cancer for my entire adult life. And I was diagnosed on September 5th, 2007. And that's the day that I went from being a technologist to a patient. And it was life-changing, but for the better. It made me a better technologist because I've always loved what I do. I've always cared about my patients and taken care of my patients the best I knew how. But after becoming one and being on their end of the machine, so to speak, it really helped me to realize what they go through and to be more empathetic and to understand cancer from a totally different aspect.
Wow. So what made you decide to even get into that field?
Well, I had been just a routine x-ray tech for a couple of years, and back in that day, mammograms were done on the x-ray table with, just a regular x-ray machine, and then over the first couple of years of me being in x-ray, dedicated mammography machines became available, and I thought, that might be something I'd like to specialize in, so I did it as a temporary job, to see if that was something that I would enjoy, and it turns out I loved it and never turned back. So.
Okay, and so working in this field with this population, were you hypersensitive, like worried that one day it could happen to you, or did you check more often?
Oh yes, and my coworkers can vouch for that. I think each of us, because we do work with it on a daily basis, we're very hypersensitive, and I can remember I work with about 10 or 15 women at the breast center, and at any given day, someone would just pop up and say, odds are one of us is going to end up with it, because that's just statistically, it's going to happen that somebody is, and it just happened to be me.
Okay, so did you ask for exams regularly, more regular than you would had you not been working in the field?
No, I stuck to my routine screening annual mammogram procedure just like anybody else would, and then just happened to have, from one screening year to the next, when I came in that day in September in 2007 and had my screening mammogram, it showed 2 cancers. Wow. From one year to the next.
Wow. So tell me about that day.
That day, it was quite shocking. I think at first I was in denial.
Okay.
And I look and I see that in patients all the time. Would have never thought I would be one of those. I'm pretty much one who looks things head on, but I didn't want to believe that I had breast cancer. And working there, it was typical for all of us techs on the day of our mammogram to go into the radiologist's office and look at our images with the radiologist and then say, okay, everything's fine, you're going back to work. And on this particular day, I did see an area that I knew looked suspicious, but I had had a suspicious area in my breast back in 2004, which was biopsied, and atypical cells, so it was kind of a precancerous, but I was told not to really worry about it because they removed it. And so I just let my mind think this is just that same
Yeah.
kind of pathology that we're dealing with. So later during the talk with my radiologist, I happened to mention to her that at the area of that previous biopsy site around the scar, I could feel a little area that kind of bothered me.
Okay.
And she said, well, I'm not seeing anything here on your mammogram that alarms me there, but let's go do an ultrasound. So we did, and she could see a small 7 millimeter mass. And I could tell by her face, when I think back, I could tell by her face and her expression that she was very solemn and very professional. She's precious anyway. But I just knew in my heart she's not feeling like things are really cool here. But I just tried to block that out of my mind. And so after that, she asked if it would be okay if we went ahead and did biopsies on the area that she saw on the mammogram and the other one. And I said, well, sure. And so we did biopsies that afternoon.
Wow.
I had 2 biopsies. And then she said, I'd like for you to come back tomorrow morning. I'm going to call over to MRI and have you scheduled for an MRI because there's a little something going on in the left breast that I'm not real sure about. So I said, okay. And so Kurt had a conflict. He had a doctor's appointment, and
Kurt, your husband?
my husband, because she encouraged me to bring my husband, and I thought, okay, something's up.
Yeah.
She's recommended that I bring my husband to this appointment, but he did. In fact, I was looking over my journal, and that I recalled from my journal that he had an appointment with his doctor that day about a hernia. And so anyway, I said, don't worry about it. I'll go to this MRI appointment. It's no big deal, really. And so I did. And after the MRI, I walked across the street back to the breast center to my radiologist and sat in her office. And she said, I really don't understand this because when I look at your MRI, everything looks good. She said, but your pathology report from yesterday is back and you do have cancer. And I just felt the blood drain out of my face. I mean, my whole body just kind of went numb.
Yeah.
I remember feeling lightheaded and kind of nauseous. And she just grabbed my hand and she held my hand and she said, but we've got this early. I know we've got this early, and you just have to keep positive and know that you're going to be okay. We're going to help you through this. And so that it was very important. Not only was it someone that I work with, but she's a friend, and I just felt comforted by her presence, the way she held my hand that day and gave me the worst news I've ever heard in my life, but in the best way she possibly could.
Okay, and so you just found out that you have cancer. Did someone have to come and pick you up? Like, how did you emotionally handle that?
Well, I was a little bit of a basket case, quite honestly, and she did not want me to drive. I mean, because I had driven that day, and she said, you are not driving home. And so we had, at the breast center that day, this particular precious volunteer, Elaine, who is a breast cancer survivor. And so someone went and got Elaine and said, will you please drive Wendy home? And one of the other technologists followed her to bring my car home. And so Elaine, having been through it herself, held my hand the whole drive home. And I was, of course, crying and thinking, I mean, the whole time I'm thinking about my children. My children were 9 and 11, and thinking about my husband and thinking, wow, I'm only 47. I've got a lot of years ahead of me. This, and it just blew my mind. And so Elaine just kept saying, I've been through this, and I know what you're going through. And she said, there have been a lot of things in my life that I would change. She said, but having breast cancer isn't one of them.
Wow.
And I looked at her and I thought, are you crazy? How can you possibly say something like that? And I totally didn't get it.
Yeah.
But now I know exactly what she meant, because so much positive has come from my breast cancer. I can't even it would take 5 shows to explain all that.
Wow, okay. So you found out, you get driven home. Was your husband, Kurt, there when you got home?
He was actually. He was, bless his heart, he's very good at helping around the house. He was taking clothes out of the dryer when I
Okay.
walked through the laundry room. And I'm not the type who kind of, smooths over anything. I just said, I've got breast cancer.
Wow.
And he was stunned, and he said, and again, I had this in my journal because I would have forgotten. He said, but I'm the one that's the hypochondriac. Because being a nurse, he's always self-diagnosed. So I think it just blew his mind that I actually had some major illness, and he's always thought he's had one but never did. But anyway, so it later, after we calmed down from that, it was just shocking to both of us. We just sat there kind of stunned. And I remember walking out onto my deck and sitting out there kind of just breathing and thinking, okay, when the kids come home from school today, I'm going to have to tell them today, because I'm not the type who can carry things well. It's all over my face when I'm upset, and I didn't want them to wonder, what's wrong with Mom? So I just felt it best to just be straightforward with them and let them know that I found out today that I had cancer.
Wow. Okay. And so you tell your husband, and did you have any fears or concerns as far as how Kurt was going to handle hearing his wife had breast cancer?
I think as a breast cancer patient, it's harder on you thinking about your family and how they're going to deal with it, because I knew where I was mentally.
Okay.
I was fine. After the initial shock, I felt like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have both breasts removed. I'm going to have reconstruction, and I'm going to do all this. But I didn't know how my children would react and how my husband was feeling through it all. But I knew where my heart and my mind were.
Hello.
Okay.
Hi, Tiara. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here with y'all.
Thank you. Truth moment. Welcome, Wendy's husband, Kurt. Kurt, so I was just asking Wendy how she felt about breaking the news to you that she had breast cancer. So why not just hear it straight from you? How did you feel when she came home and she told you that it was breast cancer?
Well, I'm a pretty much no-nonsense kind of person, so
Okay.
when she informed me of her diagnosis, I just kind of stopped for a minute. Well, first of all, I gave her a nice big hug
Okay.
and told her that we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. But also, too, with being a healthcare professional already, a nurse who is already had been a nurse for 14 years
Wow,
before
okay.
this diagnosis and had hit home, that I was like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get through this. I'm going to help my wife get through this because that's what I'm supposed to do. And I have the means and the know-how to do it, to help her
Okay.
through it.
What would you say was the hardest part for you?
The emotional part, because it does hit home, and even though you have it in your head, yes, we are going to get through this, there is the other end.
Yeah.
And the things that go through your head when they shouldn't. Am I going to be raising my kids on my own? Am I going to have my wife years from now? That was the most trying part. Was getting through the emotional part. After that, after we knew, okay, this is it, we're going to do this, and let's get to it. And,
Okay.
yeah.
And so how did you deal separately? Because when we go through things psychologically, or we have very trying situations we're in, it's good for us to be able to debrief and get away. So what was your getaway, Kurt? What did you do to be able to, so that you wouldn't show your worry and frustrations with Wendy? How did you cope separately?
I would have to say I probably just was more in tune with things that needed to be done around the house to help her not have to think about things around the house. She already mentioned that I'm a pretty good house husband, but I just made sure that things were taken care of around the house so that she didn't have to worry about that part.
Okay. Did you ever break down?
I'll be honest, yes. Not in front of anybody. It was between me and God.
Okay.
Asking Him to help get us through this and keep my wife. So, yes.
And would you say that Wendy, being a survivor of breast cancer, has enriched your marriage?
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. I feel our marriage is much stronger because of breast cancer. There too, with my healthcare nursing frame of mind, I didn't run away from this. I ran into it.
That's
Just
very
because
interesting.
I am a nurse.
I love that quote. Can you explain to me what you mean by that? You didn't run from it, you ran into it.
That's us nurses. There's a code called. Boom, we go running into that room. We don't go running away from it.
Yeah.
That patient needs us. So my patient just happened to be my wife.
Were you able to separate, like, okay, she's my patient, or did it make it harder because your patient was your wife?
Of course, I was a little more attached to this patient.
Right.
But no, I didn't really have to separate because this is my wife, and it's like, again, even if I wasn't a nurse, it's my job to help her through this, even if I wasn't a nurse. But Wendy always told me that I was her rock through this whole procedure and whole process, but she's always been and always will be my hero.
What does that mean, hearing that from him?
That means a lot to me. It really does. And he was my rock. He was very strong for me at a time when I couldn't be, because I was, during chemo and everything, I was very, very weak and drained, and he got me through it. He did. He and my children.
Okay. And so you, Kurt, probably saw a different side of the reaction from the children than Wendy saw. What would you say? How would you say that your son and daughter handled Mom's diagnosis?
You know that the old saying, ignorance is bliss?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that they were completely out of tune with what was going on, but it was nice that they were younger.
Yeah.
And not fully understanding what was going on and fully understanding that, hey, we could lose Mom. They just knew Mom was sick and we needed to get through this. Though it was also better that they were younger than older.
Okay.
Our kids were great. They helped out, with the little things around the house that they could do, and they felt proud about being able to help out around the house and stuff.
That's great. Wow, it sounds like you had an amazing support system.
I really did. I'm blessed.
Not to mention her sisters.
Yes.
Yeah. And with the fight, that's one of the most important parts. You first have to make up in your mind that you're going to fight, and then two, having a support system that supports that fight. And it sounds like Kurt and the children and your sisters, your family, did a really great job with that.
Right. This is just something that I see through work that a lot of people choose to internalize and take it on themselves. Mm-hmm. I, on the other hand, reached out because I welcomed any support, any help that anybody was willing to give. And I think it's sad that a lot of women don't feel like they can express that to other people and choose to keep it to themselves. And I mean, so many women, if you ask, is there breast cancer in your family? Well, I'm not real sure because we don't talk about it. And I just think that what I would like to convey today to women is talk about it. I mean, let your friends know what you're going through. I had a very dear friend. I mean, I called all my friends. As soon as I found out, I called my sisters first. I called my friends and I said, put me on your prayer list, number one. And just know that this is going to be a tough time. And so I had friends come out of the woodwork. I mean, one took control of meals. I mean, we didn't have to worry about meals for about 4 months, I don't think.
Wow.
And one of my friends called. She didn't ask. She just said, I'm coming over. My husband and I were going to pick up Connor and Emily. We're taking them to the bowling alley. We're going to take them to eat. No, don't want to hear. There's no discussion. I'll be there at 6 or whatever time it was. And just that kind of thing that it was just so cool to see how people just took care of me.
Yeah.
And to think of someone going through that alone, just breaks my
And
heart.
so many people do.
And they truly do. And it's nothing. And I think that some people think there's a stigma attached to breast cancer, especially. And a lot of women find shame in that. And like they may not want their spouses near them, or their spouses may turn away from them. I've had many women who I've done mammograms on say, well, my husband left me after finding out I had breast cancer. And I'm thinking, well, you're probably better off without him because if he's that shallow. But, I mean, that's just a whole different side. And I just feel thankful that I didn't internalize. And the key part for me was when I went after chemo and losing my hair, which was a traumatic experience. We can talk about that. But I wore a hat, and this hat had a little pink ribbon pin on it because I thought, you know, if I am pasty white out in public looking sick, I at least want people to know why.
Why?
So I put that little hat on and I would walk around, and I'm telling you, people would just come out of nowhere. Women would come up to me. I'd be eating at a restaurant, and women would come up to me and say, I have had breast cancer too. And they would just hug me, and I was like, this is the smartest thing I think I've ever done in my life, was put this visible symbol on what is wrong with me so that people don't evade me. They approached me, and it just, that all helped me heal too.
Okay, so was there any point where you said, I don't want to do it, it hurts, or it's too hard?
Oh, heck no, there was too much life ahead. I was like, let's get this going. Let's take this bull by the horns. And I tell you what, girl, I said, what do we need to do here? And I wanted to be the most aggressive that I possibly could with my treatment, because I wanted to be here today.
Now, is that your personality in general, or having that made you become that?
Kind of have that personality anyway, I think.
Okay.
But
Kurt's like, yeah, that's her.
but when you are faced with it, it kind of kicks things in gear a little bit. So
That's good. Was there at any point where you didn't feel as strong as far as her choosing the method that she chose for fighting breast cancer?
No, I was with her 100%. Whatever she wanted to do was what I wanted to do, and we'll just take it one step at a time. The reconstruction and everything, that takes months. It's a months-long process, so it's not this whole instant gratification thing. You have months to think about everything that's going on. So yeah, I was with her 100%, and the whole experience, I think, has probably it has made me a better nurse as well.
How so?
Because I've been through it, and we do on our floor, we have a lot of breast cancer patients. Some of them don't really want a man, but after I tell them this is what I have to offer, they choose to keep me as their nurse, and they're happy that they do, because I have a lot to offer informationally and stuff. So it has made me a better nurse for sure.
And if I can say, not only, I think, does he help the women that he's taking care of, the husbands or significant others that are in the room with him or with the patient, he can offer the male perspective to them too, which a lot of people don't have that
That is wonderful.
available. So.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
coming and providing your perspective as a supportive husband. I know Wendy thanks you, and I thank you too, because just hearing you all's story, and it sounds like it's made you better. It was so lovely for Kurt to join us. Sounds like you lucked up, girl.
I did. Gotta say.
Okay, now you all mentioned how your plan of action, your course of action, how you were going to be aggressive. What was your plan?
My plan, and I guess working in the field for so long kind of helped me prepare to know what I would do if I was ever affected by breast cancer. And I chose right off the bat to have a bilateral mastectomy. And I came home and I discussed it with Kurt. I said, I want you to know this is what I'm thinking. And I told him, I said, I'm not asking your permission. I'm taking control, but I just want you to
Be aware.
be aware and for
Yeah.
us to be on the same page. And he totally agreed, which was a relief. But I think oftentimes women are so concerned about what their husband's going to think. This is not your husband's decision. This is your decision. This is your body. It's your breast. You make the call.
Yeah.
And for me personally, it was to be as aggressive as I possibly could. I'm the type person that had I just had the right breast removed, which that breast had to be removed. A lumpectomy was not an option because of 2 cancers and they were on opposite sides of the breast, so
Okay.
the breast had to go. But for me personally, it would have been, I feel, more difficult to look at myself with a natural breast and a reconstructed breast. I also feel that I would have been a nervous wreck,
Okay.
wondering when is it going to happen to this side, since there was a question anyway about that breast. And so I knew I wanted to be aggressive, and I just felt like for my healing medically, the one mastectomy was a definite. Chemo was also recommended to help me medically, but psychologically, to help me heal, I knew that I would do better to have both breasts removed, to have reconstruction, because after seeing numerous women over the course of 20 some odd years of doing mammography, oftentimes we have women, especially older women, who had mastectomies back years ago, and their doctors wouldn't even consider letting them
Do a bilateral.
do a bilateral.
Okay.
Insurance companies didn't start paying for it, I don't think, until like 1998. And so many women have said, I wish so bad I could have had both breasts removed, because they're anxious. They're going to always be anxious every
Yeah.
time they come in and have that mammogram. But to some women, to have a breast is more important than to have both removed. So again, I want to just emphasize that this was what was best for
Yes,
me.
yeah.
And by having the plastic surgery and having reconstruction done, I knew that there would be symmetry there. And when I looked in the mirror, what I would see would be alike, instead of this is natural and this is not. I think that would have affected me in a negative way psychologically. So for my healing, it did well for me to just take it.
Okay.
Take
And
it.
your doctor was fine with that? He didn't try to talk you, or he or
No,
she
in
didn't try
fact, he, because there was a questionable issue on the left side, little calcifications like I had in the past, I told him, I said, I really want to have both breasts removed. He said, I think that's smart.
to- Okay.
And so I was like, yes, I'm glad you're on my side, buddy, because that's what we're going to do.
That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do it regardless.
We're
If
doing
I have to go
Halloween,
someone else,
right?
we're gonna do it.
That's right.
Okay, so what you went through, extremely traumatic, even though you had a lot of positives, it sounds like, that came from it. How would you say it affected you now, 8 years removed from breast cancer?
Oh, wow. I feel like I'm a much stronger person.